Hello guys, welcome to a new video on Tower of God New World, and in this video we're going to talk about dupes for the purple element. I will give you guys an overview of the element and I will tell you which units to prioritize. Then we'll go through each unit one by one. So first of all, this element to me is the most complete one. It has a good tank, a good main DPS, a good sub DPS, and a few good supports. So overall, I feel like this element has great units for each possible role and is also the strongest element I have at the moment, even though I only have Hoaqin and Khun Aguero at full rainbow. So that could already tell you guys how strong this element really is. For priorities, I would say that Hoaqin is your first priority, no doubt, is the main DPS and is the unit that will carry you the most. Next, we have Khun Aguero. This guy is the best support that the purple team has, like best SSR support, because this element also has an SSR plus, and as I said before, I'm not going to include SSR plus in this generalization if I can avoid to. So in this case, I'm just saying Khun Aguero is the best support that the purple team has, not including Gustang, but they also have different use cases, I would say. So they're not exclusive. You can use both of them and you will use both of them most of the time. Next, it also has good sub DPS, and that one would be Kiseia, the unit I would recommend to go third. I don't have her build, unfortunately, and I feel the lack of a good sub DPS at times, especially one that can target the backline, because Hoaqin can also do so, but it takes a little bit more time to get to the backline. So annoying units like Heaven or Hiwa would already have cast their special skill, so having a Kiseia would have helped a lot in those cases, but yeah. She is my third recommendation, so after Khun Aguero, I would go with her, and then that's pretty much all. The the other options are not as great, and you won't get that much value with dupes. Narae could be okay, but I feel like now that we have Gustang, she's not really uh, so important anymore. So I wouldn't dupe her up now as a priority. Then we could have Ghost. That guy can work as a tank. Is not as good as Karaka, but he can definitely work. He has more of a niche usage that we're going to talk about when we go over Ghost himself. But yeah, it's just an option. I wouldn't recommend him necessarily. And that's pretty much all as priorities. So Hoaqin first, Khun second, Kiseia third if you want. I would recommend it. And then Ghost or Narae, but at that point, I would say go and invest in another element. So yeah, that was that was it for the priorities. Now let's go over each unit one by one. So the first one is Endorsi. She is great. I always, not always, but most of the time use her in the fifth spot in my purple team, and she doesn't need any investment. She's there, like similarly to Vespa for the yellow team. She's there just to buy 1 or 2 seconds. And in addition, she's going to group up the enemies a little bit. Not too much. They are not going to be all in the same spot, obviously. And not everyone from the enemy team will target her. But usually the backline and one tank usually are going to focus her. So she's already giving enough value. I saw a lot of people also investing in her and using her as a sub DPS. You could do that, but I would rather invest in another unit that has lower value and no dupes than a unit that can already do something without investment. Because at that point, I would have two useful units instead of just one that could do a slightly better job. So what I'm trying to say is Endorsi is perfectly fine and no dupes, so I don't see the point in using additional resources to get her to cover a role which she can only do suboptimally at best. She's definitely worse than Kiseia as a sub DPS. So why would I go and invest in Endorsi when I can still use her and also have a Kiseia or another element unit at higher dupes? That's just my point and what I was trying to say. So to me, this unit is not to be invested in, and you can still play her at times, especially in lower floors. I'm still using her in the 30th floor, so floor 30, but I don't feel the need of investing in her. I think I have her at 3 purple, but it doesn't change anything just because I invested in her a little bit in the beginning and then I noticed that there was no change whatsoever. And when enemies will just delete your units, it won't matter whatever stats you give her. So to me, she's fine at 0 dupes, and I would recommend you guys to also keep her at 0 dupes. Next, we have Ghost. This guy is one of the few SSR tanks that can actually tank, so is definitely a great pick, and I would also like to build him. The only issue is that I see him more useful as the tank for a secondary purple team, not a main purple team. And that's mostly because, let's have a look at his skill. His special skill is going to reduce the magic resistance of the enemies, which we don't care at all with Hoaqin because it deals physical damage, and we don't care with Kiseia either. So this guy is only used, and I would use him only with Rachel, which I don't want to build. So for me, this guy is not that important. But definitely, if you want to go with Rachel main DPS, and beware, not sub DPS, I would never recommend the Rachel sub DPS for the same reason I've always said in other videos, and that I'm going to say again when we go over Rachel. But this guy and her are a really good pair, as they are in the manhwa, so obviously they had to make some kind of synergy between them. So I think if for some reason you want to go with the second purple team, Ghost and Rachel can be a great pair there. And you could also go with Narae in that team. She could also work really well. So overall, I don't think that's a bad idea. And I think this guy with the addition of the ignition weapon can definitely tank. He is stronger against magic damage dealing units because he has a lot of magic resistance in his kit, if we can see here from his active one. But yeah, you can still build up a lot of physical resistance anyway with the ignition weapon and also some other sources. So it's definitely still fine, but it's definitely built more against damage dealing units. You don't need as many dupes on him as you'd think, mainly because skill levels are not as important. Okay, you get a lot more heals, so that's definitely something you want, but between level 4, that I think is mandatory, so 3 purple, and level 5, there is not much difference. It's 816 against a 714, no big deal, and a 70% magic resistance against an 80% magic resistance that you won't feel that much because you will already be reaching the cap anyway. Other than that, is fine to me at 3 purple, but as most close range units, 4 orange is highly recommended for the additional HP. So I would aim for that if you're planning on actually building the second purple team. It could also work as a sub tank in your main team to support Karaka a little bit, but Karaka doesn't really need an additional sub tank, so it could be overkill there. Full rainbow is nice to have in that composition because at that point you would have the magic resistance shred a lot more quickly, and that could help in some cases. So definitely good. Okay, that's enough for Ghost. And let's go over to the next unit, which is our first SSR Plus unit. This guy is a great support, but I feel like 0 dupes is not enough on him. It's not like Evan that has the invincibility. This guy only has heals, which are not that important if your units are going to get one-shotted anyway. So to me, this guy at 0 dupes is good, but is not as valuable because it will only give like 20% attack. His patrol boats will just do no damage and die. This skill is still fine, the old Tom's Blessing, because swiftness does not scale with skill level, so you will still get the swiftness buff and swiftness debuff. That will be fine. The heals will be lower, but again, even if they were higher, it wouldn't matter that much. So overall, he's fine at 0 dupes, but I cannot really recommend him. He's still probably better than Narae, so you can you can put him there as a 4th unit, but he's definitely way better if you invest in him. This guy can also fill the role of a sub DPS in some ways, because his bots will deal a lot of damage if you take him to 3 red, and that's where I'm taking in at the moment. I have him at 1 red, and soon I will get the additional copy from the lucky draw, and then I'm going to get 1 copy from the black market to reach the 3 red, and I'm sure this guy will be a total beast then. I don't think you need more than 3 red, to be honest, because orange is not going to matter that much. Okay, the patrol bots could tank a little bit more, but that's already a really high amount of investment. I would rather pool 4 more dupes for another SSR plus than get him to 4 orange. 4 rainbow again is also overkill, but in this case even more so because this guy's special skill is just a debuff removal, which is fine, but if you cast it immediately, it's not going to remove that many debuffs anyway. And then the heal, if you cast it too early, okay, it's fine because it has the heal over time and it's going to proc the attack buff earlier. But still, I don't think it's enough to say it's worth getting 5 additional copies. Well, 9 if we consider that to me for orange is also nice to have and not more. So 9 additional copies to get him to full rainbow. It doesn't make sense to me. So I would say 3 red and that's all. Next we have the main DPS. This guy, you have to invest in him. You have to get him to 3 red at the very least before you even think about replacing him in the wish list. And even then, I would still highly recommend sticking up to this guy and getting him to full rainbow. You will definitely not regret it. And yeah, again, as Hiwa, there is not much to say. This is just the best DPS that the purple element has. So not much to say here. Now let's talk about Karaka, the second SSR unit in this element. And he's also the best tanky in the game, and also the only one that can be considered a pure tank as far as SSR Plus are concerned. This guy doesn't have invincibility, but he has a lot of magic resistance increases and physical resistance increases that help a lot, and also has 3 provoke skills, which are extremely important to stack up quickly the ignition weapon set effect, and also just to protect your allies, which is really, really good. So obviously, with the addition of the ignition weapons, this guy got a lot better. Before it was not really too useful and it wasn't even tanky. Now it can actually tank quite a lot. So definitely a really great unit now. It doesn't really need a lot of dupes, to be honest, because his skills are more built towards the effect, if I can say so, and not the scaling. 3 of them will scale with additional damage, which you do not care. And then you get the HP back on his revive on the passive. This is probably the only skill you actually care a little bit about, but not that much, because now we have a lot of ways to recover HP, and we also have Gustang as an additional support that can heal us. So you can still get away with 0 dupes. Anyway, I would recommend to take him to 3 blue and you'll get to understand better why when we get to the video on elemental advantage that I'm planning. So sure, 3 blue is probably the best option you have. You could then take him to 3 purple since you're already close, and 3 purple will give him the additional defense, but not much else. So actually, I would say I will change the recommendation here, and I will just say to me is recommended 3 blue, and then everything else is nice to have. So let's go over why. Like the additional 40% defense can be offset by upgrading the defense piece. So if I get it to plus 20, I will already have additional 40% defense, which will have offset the 3 purple effect. Still, getting a piece to plus 20 is expensive, so it's probably less expensive to get 3 additional copies, but yeah. That's just to say that there are ways to work around those 40% defense, and by how defense works is not really as important as the physical and magic damage reductions or damage reduction in general. So not important, but definitely a nice addition. 3 red, basically no use. We saw that the skills can scale additional damage, but we do not care. Everything else will stay the same. No damage reduction increase here. We'll just get more HP back, but from 60% to 80%, I don't think there is that much difference, so not worth it. For orange, again, for every tank is nice to have additional HP, so sure, it could be nice, but you don't really need it, it is tanky enough already. Full rainbow is also nice, you can start his provoke skill a lot earlier, which can help. You can stack more quickly the ignition weapon stacks, and you can start protecting his team earlier. But then again, those are a lot of copies to get. You can better use them on units that will actually like give you more like additional effects, more value than this guy. So to me, only nice to have, but yeah, nothing more. Next in the list we have Khun Aguero. This guy is the one I said has the second highest priority, so right after your Hoaqin, you should go with Khun, and I think that makes sense. This guy is great at 3 red because he gets the uh, attack scaling from his passive that will just buff the attackable purple element allies from 16% to 32%. Definitely a nice addition. It will increase the time this guy will remove one opponent from the fight from 4 seconds to 8 seconds, so definitely great there as well. Additional shield, okay, fine, not that important to me. And it is also going to give additional energy, but again, it targets the ally with the lowest HP, so it will be a similar like discussion as Narae. Fine, it could be helpful at times, but this barrier is going to get destroyed immediately because we are not investing that hard in attack for him. So the barrier will be pretty low, and the energy by consequence will be pretty low as well because the barrier will probably get destroyed. So not that much value in this barrier, but that's fine. It's also valuable the defense decrease from 20% to 40% on his special skill. So sure, it's additional damage. It's always nice. So I think this guy can provide a lot of value to your purple team and is definitely your second pick in priority. I would say that 3 red will get you a long way, but full rainbow is probably better because you, well, not is probably, is better, but it's also recommended to have because then you will start CCing the enemies a lot more quickly and also shredding their defenses, like more or less when Hoaqin is starting to dish out some damage. So that's definitely something you want to have, and yeah, that's recommended for sure. Next we have Khun Kiseia. She's again a sub DPS. She's still a DPS, so she needs the skill levels for the additional damage scaling. Definitely an important thing. So 3 red mandatory for that reason. And again, as usual, for the additional damage against yellow elements. So really, really important. She's a sub DPS, so you might want to build her after Khun Aguero, but I feel like if you really want to build her, uh, you can get Khun Aguero to 3 red first, then you can get Kiseia to full rainbow before you get Khun Aguero to full rainbow. That's the way I would go about it if I were to build her. Uh, so yeah, to me, she has a higher priority at full rainbow, but less to get a 3 red. So that's how I would go about it if I wanted to build all 3 units, Hoaqin, Khun Aguero, and Kiseia. But again, you can be fine without her at all, so you can even not build her entirely. Being a DPS, she also can make great use of the full rainbow for like using the special skill a little bit more quickly and just getting rid of annoying units. So sure, full rainbow is extremely important, but that's about all to be said about this unit. Next is a guy I don't have, is Lurker. This guy is a ranged unit. He deals magic damage, so he might be used in a second purple team with Ghost and Rachel, but I don't have him and I cannot be sure. I cannot even recommend him. I mean, guys, it, to me, is not good. I've never seen anyone talk well or about this guy, so I would recommend you guys not build him. But if you really want to, uh, you should go to 3 red for sure for the additional damage against yellow elements and also for the skill scaling. Then for orange could be fine, but he is like a ranged unit, so you don't really need the HP increase. Full rainbow is also okay, but if you do not have a lot of wounds already stacked, not really, you won't deal a lot of damage. Like overall, this guy doesn't have a lot of multipliers, so I don't think he's good. And I would recommend just skipping him and not building him. So I would just move on to the next unit, which is Khun Mascheny. She is strong. She was one of the best DPS in the game at the beginning of the game, but now I would say she is just comparable to Hoaqin at max. But like a 3 green, definitely not that good. Is the minimum requirement, so that's why it's mandatory 3 green. But definitely it's not enough to make her worth it. Full red could be okay because you already have the scaling going for you, so all the damage is there. And I think that's fine. It could be she could be comparable to a 3 red Hoaqin, to be honest. Probably not a full rainbow one. Because probably a full rainbow, she's not comparable to Hoaqin anyway. Still, she's really good as a sub DPS for Hoaqin, I would say. She has AoE ranged attacks, which are extremely important. And overall is not a bad unit, but SSR Plus are so expensive that I don't feel like recommending her, like getting dupes for her. There are better SSR Plus units than her. So also for me, a no-go, but if you wanted to, these are the usual priorities. So 3 green, the bare minimum, 3 red, recommended, and for rainbow, definitely nice to have, but not more. Okay, next we have Narae. She is okay as a support, but I don't feel like she needs that many dupes. Obviously, 3 red will just give her additional scaling, so she will regen more energy for your team. Well, not for your team, for your highest attack unit, which is going to be your main DPS. She's going to shred additional defenses on enemies, okay, it's fine. And she's also going to block additional damage. This one is not as important, unfortunately. It's too bad that it targets the lowest HP ally, because then the invincibility from the exclusive equipment is going to like be random on the unit that at that moment was the lowest. So to me, this unit, now that we have Gustang, can be just ignored. She's still fine, but I wouldn't invest too many resources in her. I won't probably never take her to 3 red because I've not been using her for the last like 5 floors anyway, even before Gustang. I was just using Endorsi a little bit and then a flex unit from a different element. So I wasn't even using her and I would not recommend duping her up. Next we have Prince. He is also sort of main DPS, which also thinks he has some tankiness but doesn't really work here in the passive. He can shred magic resistances, so I would say if you are creating a second team with Ghost and Rachel, is not really needed because Ghost is already shredding resistances, but still could be a good addition to just have additional sources of magic shred. And also it could probably deal some sort of damage, so it could be a sub DPS or something, but even after the buff, this guy still seems to be fairly weak, so I wouldn't recommend him. Still, again, is a DPS unit, so 3 red, pretty much mandatory, and for Rainbow, highly recommended. Next we have Rachel. I've mentioned her a lot as a potential second purple team main DPS, and she definitely has that potential. She is a good unit, but she's Rachel. So keep that in mind. I will not invest in her. I did at the beginning of the game and I regret it. Uh, there were no other options really that early in the game, so I kind of had to, and I highly regret it. I'm happy for those of you guys that don't even have her, but yeah. Her skills overall are okay, but let's say that the logic uh, is still the same. She's a main DPS, so 3 red per minimum, and for Rainbow, that's what you really want because her special skill is really, really good. So, uh, obviously, if I were to take her to full Rainbow, she could make a really great main DPS, not at the level of Hoaqin, so to me, not worth it. And that was all for this video on the purple element. I wish you all guys a nice rest of your day, and I will be seeing you guys in the next one on the red element. Bye!